let's get to the report card. And I want to start off with the coaching staff. And some people might think that I'm way too nice of a teacher here, and my grades are a little too high, a little too optimistic. But please, let me explain. I will go through my thoughts and why I have graded, who I have graded, what I have graded them. The coaching staff. I give the coaching staff a C-. Now, before I get into the grade itself, it's early. This is a young staff. They have a learning curve. And I think we all understand that this was going to take some time. And they should improve throughout the year. Now, if they don't improve, we have big issues because the coaching has to be better, even with the injuries. The injury situation is tough, but you have to be better. And there are ways you can be better, which I will go into. So I'm giving the coaching staff as a whole a C-. I give them positive points for Cincinnati, right? Nobody had any beef with Cincinnati. That helps the grade. I thought Seattle, for the most part, was good. So the first 2 weeks of the season, not bad. I think if you left the first 2 weeks of the season, you'd probably give this coaching staff around a B, right? Well, it drops from a B or so down to a C- because the Jets game was an atrocity and San Francisco wasn't much better. I also give the coaching staff a C- because we have to include Jeremy Springer. And it might sound outrageous, but one of the three phases of football is special teams. And the Patriots' special teams have been very good. So I'm giving Springer an A. Shout out to him. He's been terrific. Bryce Behringer is the 5th best punter in football. Marcus Jones is the 8th best punt returner in football. They have created a couple of turnovers. They have allowed Joe Cardona to be more aggressive, get downfield. So they've created a couple of turnovers. And their coverage has been good. Their punt coverage, their kickoff coverage has been good. So shout out to Jeremy Springer. That's the good. That's the good. Overall, they have not been nearly good enough. In the last 2 weeks have been borderline dreadful. If you said dreadful, I would have a tough time disagreeing with you. The overall issue to me with this team from this coaching staff is that they lack aggression. My hope was Bill Belichick, who was pretty damn conservative since 2012. If you look at the analytics and the statistics, I've talked about this a bunch. Belichick was very conservative post-2012, even with Brady. My hope was that this coaching staff would be more aggressive. Special teams, they've been more aggressive in certain areas. But I thought this team would be much more aggressive and should be much more aggressive, especially offensively, and especially their head coach. And I don't think this coaching staff has been aggressive enough. You go back to Mayo's decision on 4th down to start that game off against San Francisco. We talked about it on Monday. I thought that was a hideous decision. Double-digit underdog, set the tone for your football team. You're on the plus 41. It's 4th and 3. Go for it. Don't punt. Lack of aggression. The team also went into a shell offensively in the second half. What do I mean by that? Well, Andrew Callahan, our friend at the Boston Herald, he posted that by the end, Van Pelt seemed to punt on the idea of a comeback. Alex Van Pelt called runs on more than 50% of the Patriots' first down plays in the second half. So it was run the football, run the football, run the football on first down in the second half when you're down by multiple possessions. What are we trying to accomplish here? I'm not saying go downfield on first down, but what are you trying to accomplish when you're down by a couple of touchdowns, if not more, and you're running the football the majority of the time on first down? You've got to mix it up. You've got to be a little bit more aggressive. And I thought that, this really was also the case against Cincinnati in week 1 when Van Pelt called a bunch of runs in the second half. Don't go into your shell. Be aggressive. I'm not saying be aggressive 100% of the time, but pick your spots and be more aggressive than you've been. The defense, DeMarcus Covington, they are relying a lot on playing zone. I would say too much zone from this defense. Evan Lazar wrote about it. He wrote they've played cover 2 on 25.3% of opponents' pass plays. That is a next-gen stats era high for a Patriots defense. So since 2018, they're playing the most cover two against opponent pass plays that we've seen them play in 6 years. They're playing soft. They're playing soft. They're playing too much zone. Lazar wrote they're also playing less man coverage on third down. So when they've got third down, they don't play man. They stick with zone. Again, lack of aggressiveness. And the Patriots are allowing a conversion rate of 51.9% on third down, which is brutal. So you're not playing a lot of man on third down. Teams are converting third downs, but you continue to not play a lot of man on third down. The Pats are playing two high safeties 39% of the time on third down. That is also a next-gen era high for New England. So they're playing the most cover two we've seen. They're playing the most two high safety on third down that we've seen in the past 6 years. And Evan writes that, when you play split safety coverage, you need to get home with a four-man rush. And we know that this Patriots defense has not been able to get home with their four-man pass rush. We've been talking about it since the freaking preseason. So you're not getting home with a four-man rush, but you're still playing two high safety on third down. That's why you're getting roasted on third down. You're not being aggressive. You're not being aggressive up front by sending extra guys or trying a five-man pass rush consistently on third down. And you're not being aggressive enough on the back end because you're not playing man coverage. You're playing soft in the back and you're playing soft up front. What's that mean? You're playing soft. You're not being aggressive enough. And what's even more maddening, against San Francisco on Sunday, according to Callahan, when the secondary went man-to-man, Brock Purdy was 2 for 9, 22 yards passing. So you're playing too much zone. When you get to third down, you're playing too high safety and trusting a four-man pass rush that hasn't been good enough. And you don't go to man, even though, as you're watching the game play out, Brock Purdy is not nearly as effective against man coverage. None of it makes sense. You're splitting the baby, so to speak. You're playing zone coverage without a rush. Well, if you're going to play zone coverage, eventually you got to get some rush going. It'll drive you crazy. Let's get to Mayo, because that's the overall staff, okay? Let's get to Mayo. Mayo has not been very good. Point blank. Simple. Mayo hasn't been good enough. He hasn't been good enough when using his timeouts, clock management. We saw it against Seattle before halftime when they completely butchered that situation. We saw it this past weekend against the 49ers when Brock Purdy fumbled the exchange. The Patriots could have used a timeout, got the football back with more time. They let San Francisco run the clock out. You eventually get the punt. And then, yes, you get 3 points at the end of the half because Joey Sly is that kind of guy. But you didn't call the timeout, so you didn't have enough time to try to get a touchdown. Mismanagement, clock mismanagement. Gerard Mayo said before the season that he's going to make mistakes, but he will not be a repeat offender, that he is not a repeat offender. Well, he has been a repeat offender. Multiple times making the same mistake. He's got to clean it up. And he's also not drawing the line, right? He's not showing his team that there are consequences for certain actions. Ramondre Stevenson fumbles again on Sunday. He should have been benched. And I know he's one of the best players you have on offense, but you can't let the guy keep fumbling the football. You have to draw the line. I don't need Gerard Mayo to be Bill Belichick Jr. I don't need him to have a hair across the tuk-tuk like Belichick and bench somebody like Pop Douglas in his rookie season when he fumbles one time because Bradley Chubb makes a ridiculous play from behind and punches the ball out. I don't need Mayo to be as hard of a hard ass as that. But I also don't want the head coach to just allow Ramondre Stevenson to fumble the football over and over and over again and not show that there are consequences for those actions. Stevenson should have been benched. on Sunday. And I said on Monday, I would bench Stevenson for the first half of this weekend's game. You failed to send the message last weekend like you should have. Bench him at least for the first half on Sunday against Miami so you can send some kind of message. Consequences. JB brought up earlier on the super chat, right? The wide receivers. Are there going to be consequences if guys keep showing up the quarterback on the field? There has to be. Devon Godshaw, Jabril Peppers, saying that some of their teammates have been selfish. You got to try to keep that stuff in-house. Again, it's not black or white. I don't need Mayo to be Belichick. I don't want him to be Belichick. But this stuff has to get reined in. You don't have to be tight, but you can certainly keep it more in-house. And you can get this back on the rails because there seems to be a lack of discipline right now and a lack of consequences for the mistakes that people make. Mayo's got to be better. And so does DeMarcus Covington. Yes, I know there's been injuries. Yes, I know they traded Matthew Judon. But this defense is not good. Just not good enough. Lazar, 8th last season, he writes. The Patriots are 25th in expected points added after being 8th last year. They're 24th against the pass in EPA. They are 31st. They are the second worst defense in the league on third down. They're 27th in yards per play allowed. They have forced just 2 turnovers in 4 games, and they're 23rd in team pressure rate. They are not doing anything right. And again, it's not black or white. I understand the injuries. I understand that Matthew Judon got traded. I understand Christian Barmore has blood clots. I get it. But that doesn't mean you have to be towards the bottom of the league in a bunch of statistical categories. You have to be better than that. You still have some talent on this team. You've got 3 good cornerbacks. Yes, 2 of them are small, but you've got 3 good corners. Jabril Peppers is a good football player. Keon White, Godshaw, they're good football players. You should not be 31st, 27th, 24th in all of these categories. Defensive DVOA. In 2023, the Patriots were 9th. This year so far, they're 27th. They have to get better. And some things that Covington has done leave me scratching my head. What is the Christian Gonzalez plan? Because early, you had Gonzalez shadowing some of the best receivers. On Sunday, you decided to not have Gonzalez shut one guy down. If you're asking me, Christian Gonzalez should be put on one receiver, shadow that receiver, and shut that receiver down. So you don't have to worry about that guy. If you have multiple receivers that are really good, then you have Gonzalez shut down or at least try to limit one of those guys, and then you roll coverage to the other guy. Gonzalez needs to be utilized as the weapon that he is. Stop playing so much damn zone. Play more man coverage with one of your best players. Gonzalez has been really good this year. Trust that guy. Lean on that guy. He's been capable. If he starts to crap his pants, then change the idea and change the approach. But be more aggressive and trust your cornerbacks who are good. Not every team will roll out, 6'2", 6'3" receivers like the Jets had in spades. And it was tough to play man at times in that game because Rodgers would just throw it to the wide receiver and they would manhandle the smaller corner. But you've got to get away from playing so much zone. You've got to trust one of your best players on that side of the ball in Christian Gonzalez and let him do what he does best, which is stick on coverage. The pass rush discipline, we've talked about it, not going to spend a lot of time on it. It's got to stop happening. You can't have Keon White blow containment on 3 plays in the first drive of Sunday's game, allowing Brock Purdy to pick up yardage. That's a coaching problem. Joshua Uche had 40 snaps on Sunday. He didn't have a single pressure. Meanwhile, on one of the Jordan Mason runs, I believe it was the touchdown, Uche is like down the field, nowhere near the play. He's running down the field like his ass is on fire while Mason runs right by him. And then you have Jalen Hawkins take a bad angle. Ends up being a touchdown. Pass rush discipline, that's on Covington. Another issue with Covington, he's reactive instead of proactive. Andrew Callahan wrote about Shanahan versus Covington on Sunday. Shanahan baited the Patriots into keeping their beefy base personnel on the field more than 60% of the time and lulled them into a false sense of security by calling runs that gained few yards and felt like landed body blows for the D. And when the 49ers passed against this slow-footed group, they landed knockout punches. They baited Covington, they baited the defense, and they kept baiting them. And they said, okay, yeah, you stopped us running the football for 3 yards, but now we're going to crush you over the top. They sucked Covington in. Blown assignments is a problem. My buddy Greg Bedard has written about this. Blown assignments in the secondary. Missed tackling all of a sudden has become more of an issue, especially in the Jets game. Now, that was a shorter week, but they still had some issues on Sunday against the Niners with that stuff. That's Covington. I'm going to get to Alex Van Pelt in a second, but do me a favor. Like the podcast as you watch it. Help us beat that algorithm. Throw a comment in, whether you're watching live or on demand. You can always throw a comment in. That also helps the traffic. And subscribe to the channel. All right, let's get to Alex Van Pelt, because I think many of you want me to get to Alex Van Pelt. You can't wait to get to Alex Van Pelt. Alex Van Pelt has not been good. He has not been nearly good enough. He has been predictable as a play caller. Let's give you some examples, or at least one really good example. Van Pelt's predictability. Andrew Callahan writes, when the Patriots are within one possession, so when the Patriots are within one possession, 81% of the time they run the football when Jacoby Brissett is under center, okay? So you got that one possession game. You see Jacoby Brissett under center. You know as a defense that more than 80% of the time they're going to run the football. Predictable. Even worse, when it's a one-possession game and Jacoby Brissett is in the shotgun, 73% of the time, Jacoby Brissett throws a pass. If you are a defensive coordinator, you can gamble on that stuff. This was heading into the San Francisco game, by the way. If you're San Francisco and you're heading into that game and you say to yourself, all right, when it's a one-possession game, if Jacoby's under center, they run the ball more than 80% of the time, what are you going to do? Your defensive players, they see Jacoby Brissett under center, one-possession game, they're going to go after Brissett because they're going to be saying to themselves, they're going to run the football, and they're going to attack your line of scrimmage. Predictability. Same thing. If it's a one-possession game and you're in the shotgun going into that San Francisco game on Sunday, the defense knows that there's a better than 70% shot that Jacoby Brissett is going to throw the football on that particular down. Predictability. They're not running play action off of inside zone and duo looks enough, which has been their most successful running plays. They're not helping the left tackle enough. We went through this on Monday. It was upwards of, 14 times when Nick Bosa was allowed to rush against your fourth-string left tackle one-on-one. That is absurd. It's terrible coaching, and it's inexcusable. Anybody who's watched enough football, they know you can't allow your fourth-string guy to go one-on-one against Nick Bosa, or your fourth-string guy is going to get his ass whooped. Which, guess what? It's precisely what happened. Inexcusable. You know left tackle's an issue. Help your left tackle. Pretty much every single snap, help your left tackle. Because guess what? You can run 2 or 3 successful plays with the help of the left tackle, and then you decide not to help the left tackle, and Bosa blows it up. Help the guy on that side. This is easy stuff. I mean, this isn't rocket science. Van Pelt is not scheming guys open at times. Callahan writes, as the old wisdom goes, coaches get receivers open versus zone. Receivers get themselves open against man-to-man. The Patriots faced zone 79% of their passing plays against the Niners. 79% of the Patriots' pass plays on Sunday against San Francisco was against zone coverage. The Patriots averaged 3.5 yards per drop back, which is clearly an indictment on Alex Van Pelt. Clearly an indictment. They talked about being a screen team. They're not throwing any screens. And when they throw screens, they're predictable. They get blown up. The one or two screens they call every once in a grand while. They might call a screen every 3 quarters. This team was supposed to depend on the screen game, to tight ends, to running backs, to wide receivers. And I know, Ryan Shaw, I understand the line is cooked. The injuries are crazy. Talked about it at the beginning of the podcast. But you can still be better. A 50+% pressure rate is obnoxious. And you can coach certain things. As I just mentioned, your pressure rate could be better if you don't leave your 4th string left tackle on an island against one of the best pass rushers in football. There are things that you can do. It doesn't have to be this bad. It took him 3 weeks to start throwing the football quickly with Brissett. Van Pelt was calling, long developing play action passes from under center, turning Jacoby Brissett's back to the offensive line when his offensive line was giving up a bunch of pressures. Finally, by week 4, he changed some of that. Why does it take 3 weeks? Why do you not adjust and realize Bosa's going to roast Jacobs? Here's another thing. Personnel groupings. Back to Andrew Callahan. A lot of Callahan notes here, who does great work, watches the film. The Patriots' most common offensive personnel grouping is 11 personnel. 3 receivers, 1 running back, 1 tight end. The most common offensive personnel grouping that they use is also their least efficient. So 11 personnel has not worked well, but yet they use it the most. Success rates in 11 personnel from weeks 1 to 4 against the Bengals, 46% success rate. Against the Seahawks, 31.5%. Against the Jets, 34%. Against the Niners, 25.7%. You're running 11 personnel, and it's not working, but you keep running 11 personnel. Now, part of the problem is because you're trying to get Pop Douglas on the field, and you don't trust Pop Douglas in 12 personnel because you're rolling big with the 2 tight ends, and Pop Douglas is not somebody who's going to block downfield a ton because he's not a big dude. But if you're going to play 11 personnel more often, you got to get more success out of it. Here's one more thing about Alex Van Pelt because I got to get to Elliott Wolf. Here's one more thing about Alex Van Pelt. And by the way, Angel, as far as a wide receiver, yes, as a bona fide number 1, but the wide receivers have not been as bad as you think. We'll get to that in a little bit. One last thing about Van Pelt, the lack of window dressing. What do I mean by that? Motion. Motion, 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 motion. It's 2024. If you want to take the heat off of your quarterback, if you want to confuse the defense to open things up a little bit, guess what you do? You run motion. You run motion. Why? Because it gets the defense moving. It forces the defense to tell you if they're zone or if they're man. It opens up opportunities for big plays. The window dressing. Do you know that the Patriots are dead last in motion at the snap? Not before the snap, but at the snap of the football. The Patriots have had motion at the snap of the ball only 8% of the time. That is hideously low. The average in the NFL is like 20%, 22%. The average NFL team is running motion at the snap about 20%, at least 20% of the time. You're running it 8% of the time. The average throughout the league is more than twice the amount of motion at the snap that you're running. The Patriots are 20th in the NFL in pre-snap motion. Lack of creativity from the offensive play caller.